Hi folks, Sty again. Time for another Sty story. It's snowing like the devil out there. That's why I'm in here doing a video right now. I went out for my hike today and tried out my new pair of boots. I got a pair of boots that's good for 40 below. Um, yep, they're good for 40 below. It's only about 31 degrees out right now. It's just below freezing. Just enough to get a lot of lake effect snow off of Lake Superior. And so I tried out my new pair of boots, winter boots, and I got a pair that's said that they're good for 0 to 40 below Fahrenheit. Holy smokes. I felt like I had hot coals in my boots today. So yeah, I think they're going to work just fine this winter. So I went out on my hike and I got to thinking, I thought, well, when I get back home, I'm going to do a quick Sty story. And it was going through my mind that what do I have on my list of Sty stories I haven't videoed yet? And then it came to me that I got a little Sty story that I didn't put on my list, and I'll do it. Then I don't have to try to remember to put it on my list. So here we go. This Sty story is called Brownie the Burro. Okay. Now, this goes back to when I lived out west. I lived up in the Northwest in the Rocky Mountains, and I was there with my family, my ex-wife and my 4 children. And we, at the time, we were living in a really nice, what I considered, well, the whole family liked that house. We lived in a old house that originally was a small cabin, probably about 16 by 20 foot cabin, that over the years they had put additions on it, and the house was only on the grid as far as it had electricity and running water, which is really nice. Those two items are really nice. But the only source of heat the house had was a fireplace. And it's very difficult to heat a house with just a plain fireplace that doesn't have like a heatilator insert in it, you know. And it didn't have an electric or gas stove in it. It had a big Sears Charm wood cook stove. And so the house was very rustic, and we were loving it. Very, very nice house to live in, comfortable place, old and rustic, but warm and cozy. So that's where we were living. Now, at that time, I had everybody around town knew when Sty was coming into town, because I drove an old 1947 Willys Jeep. Okay, an old military Jeep that was painted fire engine red. Now, can you imagine that? Not a very stealthy vehicle. They could see you coming from miles away in that bright red Jeep. I went everywhere in that Jeep. Boy, a lot of backcountry trips on it, using that old Jeep. Well, the problem with the Jeep is it didn't make a very good all-round daily use vehicle, because I didn't have a cab on it. It was just open air. It wasn't big enough to haul the whole family in. And so I had gotten myself a nice international crew cab pickup truck. And nice and big, hauled the whole family. It was a 1-ton truck, actually, 1-ton chassis. Nice truck. And I found I just wasn't using the Jeep anymore. And it just sat there and sat there. And once in a great while, I'd take it out and use it. And, well, this local fella, he come to the house one day, and he said, I got off to an early start deer hunting this year, and I've shot a couple of deer. And he said, we're never going to use all the meat. Would you like one of the deer? He said, I heard that you folks prefer to eat venison over beef, so he's offering me a deer that he shot. And I said, well, sure, I'll take a deer anytime. And so he had the deer in the back of his pickup truck, and we're unloading the deer, and he saw my Jeep. And he goes, you ever use that Jeep anymore? He says, I haven't seen you driving it around. I said, I just don't get the use out of it I used to. He said, you wouldn't be interested in a trade, would you? And I said, well, it depends on what you want to trade. He says, well, I got this donkey, he says. And I go, a donkey? He goes, well, it's a BLM Sierra Nevada burro. It was on the Adopt a Donkey program, and he had the donkey for a couple of years. And so he had title to the donkey, so it was his. He could sell it if he wanted. And he says, I'll trade you that donkey. And I said, no. I said, you can get one of those burros for $125 from the BLM on the Adopt a Donkey program. And I said, I don't want some little old burro. What am I going to do with him? And he says, oh, no, he makes a great pack animal. He says, and he's not a small one. He's quite large, actually. He says he's 10 hands. He's quite tall. He had a back on him that's about 4.5 feet off the ground, maybe 5 feet. He said, he's a large burro, very large one. And he said, and he's already broke and trained to pack. And I said, well, he's still not worth how much that Jeep's worth. And he said, well, I'll tell you what, I'll throw in the sawbuck, the pack saddle with him, the whole rigging. Well, I knew the rigging was worth about $500-600. So you throw the donkey in on it. Yeah, I said, I can do that. I'll trade you the Jeep for that donkey. Well, he brought the donkey over to my place with the rigging, and he took my Jeep. Well, I asked him, what's the donkey's name? He says, Brownie. And he said, good luck with him, and off he went. Well, Brownie had some odd habits, and this fella hadn't told me what those odd habits were. So, so as we got to know Brownie, and I put the rigging on him, and he's fine. He didn't mind being rigged up at all, and get the sawbuck saddle on him, and I threw a couple of packs on the sawbuck and took him out hiking around the place for a while just to get him used to me and me used to him, and old Brownie was one tough burro. Now I'll tell you, these burros, and I've been considering maybe in the future I'll get another one. My son has 10 acres, beautiful 10 acres, but most of it, almost the whole thing, is cleared. It's just pasture kind of land, rolling hills with pasture. And I'm going to be doing some bushcrafting down on that property next summer. Now, he's considering whether or not he would allow me to fence in a portion of his 10 acres and put a burro on it. Burros are easy to take care of, Sierra Nevada burros, because they were born in the wild. I mean, they're just like a wild horse. Very tough. They can really handle the elements well, and their feed requirements aren't as high as a domesticated horse, so they're much easier to care for. So I'm considering getting another one. But back to Brownie. Now, here we go about Brownie the Burro. I never left our property with him, and then finally one day I decided, well, he's behaving so well, I'm going to take a 3-dayer and go up in the backcountry a little bit and let him pack all my gear for me. I thought this will work good. So I put a lead rope on him, had the packs all on him, and I mean, I packed everything, tent, food, everything. I had way more than I needed, but I wanted to see how well Brownie packed. So we take off. first thing we run into is I have to cross a blacktop highway. We got to that road, and when I went to cross that highway, and that highway tended to be busy and a lot of truck traffic on it, I got to that road and I realized there wasn't anything coming, so time to head across. I start walking across and Brownie's following me. He got to the edge of that blacktop and he hit the brakes. He looked down at that road and he looked at me like, it ain't happening. He didn't like that white stripe that's on the edge of the road. And I kept pulling on. Finally, he jumps over that white line like it's going to jump up and get him. And he sat there and he pawed on the blacktop. And he would shake his head and sniff the blacktop and then paw on it again. Started pulling him, and he's coming along just fine until he saw the double yellow line in the center of the highway. Oh, he didn't like that. He started burrowing, and he's bellowing and hollering, and he's just, no, I'm not crossing that. And I kept pulling him. Finally, he got brave, and he jumped over that center line, and he's running like the devil, but he's looking behind him back at that yellow line like it's going to get him. And all of a sudden, he sees that white line, and the next thing I know, he's airborne again into the ditch, onto the shoulder and into the ditch, right past me. I couldn't hang on to him. He yanked the lead rope out of my hand, and off he headed up this big hill into the woods. Well, it took me about an hour to finally catch up with him and calm him down enough that I could get a hold of the lead rope. That road scared him to death. Well, we got up in the backcountry a ways, about, I'd say, 6 miles or so, and we came to a creek. Now, trying to get him across that creek, it was impossible. He would not step into that creek. He did not like anything about that creek. And it was a shallow crossing. It was only a foot and a half deep. But he was not going to get in that water. He wasn't going to cross that creek. Now, I got so frustrated, I just dropped his lead line, and I walked across the creek to show him it's okay. And I went and I sat on the other bank, and I thought, well, it's time for a break anyhow. And I sat on this rock, and I reached in my pocket, and I had a pack of these crackers. I opened those crackers up, started eating those crackers, and all of a sudden he starts whinnying at me. He wants a snack. He wants whatever I'm eating. And I just looked at him and I said, Brownie, if you want a cracker, you have to come across the creek. And you know what? That goofy bugger walked right across that creek like it wasn't even there, gave him a cracker, and he was happy as can be. And off we went, up into the back country. And he behaved himself the next couple of days, no problem. On our way home, when we got back to that creek, no way. He was not crossing that creek. It wasn't going to happen. So I walked to the other side, and I dug in my pockets, found another pack of crackers, and he heard that plastic on the crackers, and he looked up, his ears went straight up. Next thing I know, here he comes, just hopping through that creek, and he runs across right up to me for a cracker. So, for the couple of years I had Brownie, whenever I wanted him to cross the road, if I wanted to get across the creek, any place he would decide to stop and not move, all I had to do was have one of those crackers in my pocket, and he'd come tooling right across. That was one of his odd behaviors. He was really odd about that. Now, the other thing that was odd about him was because he was born and raised in the Sierra Nevadas, burros hate coyotes with a passion. So any kind of canine, any kind of dog, and they're going to go after him. And I found that out. Boy, he went after our dogs, and he learned to accept our dogs eventually. But the neighbors' dogs, they were really aggressive. They'd come over and they'd chase them and try to bite them and stuff, and he'd turn on them. And the one dog, he stomped that dog almost to death. I had to get him off of that dog. And it got to the point where everybody started calling Brownie the dog killer. Well, he never did kill a dog, but I think he would have if I wouldn't have been around when he went after one. So it was nice having him in camp. I, I, I never hobbled him, and I never had to tie him on a lead. I just let him wander around camp. He would never go out of eyesight, and I didn't have to worry about him because if coyotes showed up, he'd stand there just like a guard dog, and he'd defend camp of any coyotes that came in. He was a character, a real character. The funniest thing I can remember with him, though, was my ex-wife. She said, "Can Brownie be ridden?" I said, "I don't know." I said, "I'm not going to ride him." I said, "He's a donkey. I'm not riding him." I said, "Plus, look at his back. They got a real prominent backbone." I said, "Hey, that'd be pretty uncomfortable. And we don't have a saddle that would fit him." I had a saddle for my saddle horse, but that big old thing would have never fit on that donkey. And I told her, I said, "Well, I suppose if you threw a saddle blanket on him, you could jump on him and ride him." I don't know how you would, though. I don't know how he'd react. So we went out there and we put a bit in his mouth and threw the reins over his withers, and the ex-wife jumped on his back and tried to ride him. Well, he did not like those reins, and he did not like the bit in his mouth, and he fought that and buck and kick her off, and no way, he wasn't going to do it. Well, then she got, one of the kids came and yelled, "Dad, you got to come out here and see what Mom's doing." And I went out to the corral, and here's my ex-wife sitting on that burro, and she's got a big old fern branch, a fern leaf. And she'd pat that donkey on the rear end with that fern leaf, and he'd start trotting along. And to turn him, we had barrels out in the corral, and to turn him, she was practicing around the barrels, the obstructions. To turn him, she'd reach up and tap him on the face. So if she wanted to go left, she'd tap him on the right side of the face, and he'd just turn to the left. Tap him on the left side of the face, and he'd turn to the right. Keep him going, just tap him on the rear. And all she had to keep tapping him on the rear end, because if she stopped, he stopped. And then it came to mind that that's Brownie. Unless you're leading him or prodding him to move, he'd rather just stop and stand there, especially if he's got weight on his back. So she was able to ride that burro around with nothing but a fern. All he's wearing is a halter. He doesn't have reins. He doesn't have a lead rope on him. And she could ride that donkey all over the place with nothing but a fern in her hands. Now, I didn't have a video camera back then. I didn't even have a working still camera, so I feel really bad I couldn't have gotten a picture of her riding Brownie. But that's Brownie the Burro. He was one of Stuy's buddies out there in the northwestern Rockies, and I took many a hiking trip and packing trip with Brownie the Burro. And Brownie the Burro was a great meat packer during hunting season. You could take him up and pack out a lot of meat with him. The nice thing with a burro is pound for pound, a burro can pack more per his body weight than a horse can. Now, I'm not saying that he can pack more than a horse can. I'm saying you take his body weight in comparison to what's on his back, and he can carry more on that ratio than any horse can. And not including big workhorses, Clydesdales, Shires, that's totally irrelevant. I'm talking about pack animals, but yeah, he's a tough bugger. And the nice thing about a burro, they don't have to be shod. You don't have to put shoes on. I let Brownie go barefoot all the time. Kept his hooves nice and trimmed down. Made sure that he didn't get windfalls or cracks in his hooves. But you know, he was the most sure-footed animal I ever went in the backcountry with. You could take him down a trail where you're walking heel to toe because it's so narrow, and he's right behind you, and he's got all that weight, all those packs on, and he can walk heel to toe right along with the person. If you can walk it, he can walk it. No, however narrow it gets, for some reason, that burro was able to walk on any trail that a person could walk on. But I miss Brownie the Burro, and I sold him eventually. After a couple of years, I sold him. And like I said, someday maybe I'll own another one. I could see the purpose in having them here. I could trailer them up into the Schwamigan forest, and I could go out there for a week or so with a burro with all the gear I could pack on them. So, yeah, here we go. Stuy's thinking ahead. I don't know if I really want to go there, but I just got this inkling. Stuy might own a burro again someday. So let's see what happens, right? Okay, there you go. That's Brownie the Burro. Just a goofy Stuy story. Glad you watched. Glad you tagged along. And this is Stuy saying goodbye for now, and you all have a very nice day. Bye-bye.